Hello everyone, welcome to Indian Economy by Aman Soni. In this new series called PREority, we would be discussing the important economic concepts for the upcoming prelims examination. Today, let's discuss the topic reverse charge mechanism. What is reverse charge mechanism? Before that, we'll see under a normal sale, what would happen for the tax collection. There would be a supplier of goods and there would be a purchaser or receiver of goods. He would supply him goods and the receiver would pay the amount plus GST, which is the tax. Then what the supplier would do? The supplier would deposit this tax to the government. Here if we can take the supplier as a wholesaler and this receiver as a retailer, and then the same thing happens with the consumer too. The consumer purchases goods and services. The consumer pays amount plus GST. Then the receiver would deposit the GST to the government. This is what a normal sale looks like and how the transaction takes place. What is reverse charge mechanism? Under the reverse charge mechanism, instead of the supplier depositing the GST to the government, the receiver would deposit the GST. So here what would happen? There is a certain class of supplier who would deposit, who would send goods to the receiver, and here he would just pay the amount. Here the supplier won't deposit GST to the government. This won't happen. Here the receiver would deposit the GST to the government directly. This is called reverse charge mechanism. As you can see in the name, here GST is charged by the supplier on the receiver and he is depositing it to the government. Here it is like he is charging GST on himself and he is depositing it to the government. Instead of the charge being on the receiver and the supplier depositing it, here from the government's point of view, the charge is on the receiver itself. That is why the name reverse charge, because the goods are moving this way but the charge is happening on the receiver itself. From the government's point of view, instead of the supplier depositing, the receiver is depositing the GST. That's why the name reverse charge mechanism. And this happens in case of certain class of suppliers. Who are those? And why is this reverse charge mechanism in their GST Act? If you see in the GST Act, there is a certain limit for the turnover for GST registration, and there are various technical terms limits for sale to register under GST and who has to pay what rate, etc. What about the unorganized sector person who doesn't have to pay GST under the GST Act? Because his turnover is so low, he is not bound to be registered under the GST Act. But in the GST, there is a provision there. When you purchase from a unregistered seller and you are a registered seller, at that time, because the unregistered seller is not registered with the government under the GST Act, you are registered as a seller under the GST. Even if you purchase from an unregistered seller, you would just give him the amount and you have to deposit the tax to the government. It is same like how we looked here. Here instead of the supplier who is the unregistered supplier, you are the registered supplier, you are depositing the tax to the government. One of the examples is supply from an unregistered dealer to a registered dealer. And other example is when the sale happens through, say, Amazon. In case of e-com operator, here the person, you, the consumer who is purchasing, here Amazon is just a third-party retailer, but still he is arranging the deal, so he would deposit instead of you depositing the GST to the government. Take the taxi example of Ola or Uber. Even there, the taxi person he won't be able to register under the GST because his sale and his turnover, his service providence will be low. But the Ola company will deduct the GST and it would deposit. Compared to Amazon example, this Ola and Uber is a better example. So you can remember the Ola and Uber example. And to exempt certain class of suppliers, there are various technical provisions wherein certain class of suppliers, say a transportation service who is unregistered, who provides transportation services to a manufacturing firm. In that case, the manufacturing firm has to deposit the GST to the government. So the basic idea is the same. Instead of the supplier depositing it to the government, the receiver of the good or the service would deposit the GST to the government. And in case of import of services, because the service provided to India, he is not there in India, he is not physically present in India, and the importer of services is physically present in India, here the person who is importing the services has to deposit the GST to the government. That's why the name reverse charge mechanism. That's about reverse charge mechanism. Thank you so much.